I'm not sure where they are. It's from all over the state. Like the numbers are from all over the state, so I'm not sure if that's really staff.
Yes, they have to do that. Yes, so they live in exactly. Only they very much collaborate with the two families together, visitations and all that. So for whatever what works.
Once you determine that, if you want to go on Monday, yeah, we're at West Hartford, but service all of them get this. Right, so what we do is
they can have, they're kind of empowered to make a difference. So it's completely youth driven. The kids talk about what they want to impact the most, and we kind of give them the tools to get that.
We do have an independent housing support program, and we also have the companion homes where we provide services for adults and adults. So,
Did you have any advice for people about self-advocacy?
And I will use my fame to advocate for autism and ADHD. So yeah.
And also, I just want to be as a pro wrestler, and also pro wrestler. I just want to be as a rugby player, and yeah, I just want to travel a lot and get my own place to move out.
Wow, you have a lot of dreams. That's awesome.
Yes.
Do you have any advice for self-advocacy? Self-advocacy, like, and advocating for yourself?
Any examples?
Speaking up for yourself. Do you have any
Yes.
suggestions or
Yes.
advice?
Just stand up for myself and don't let people get on my life to you. But I don't want to be no handicapped and no special needs. I'm uncomfortable with it. I'm getting very uncomfortable. But I don't like people telling me what to do, like waving hands and doing anything like that. That's kind of irritating. It don't make me feel like my own man, but I'm my own man already.
Absolutely.
Parrots is my favorite animal because they're so cute, it's so friendly, nice little parrots.
Wow, that's exciting.
Not let yourself down, and always, stand up for yourself. Be the man or be the woman who can stand up for themselves. And make sure not anything goes awry and stuff like that.
Hello, everybody. Isn't this a great summit? Give yourselves all a big round of applause. You deserve it. This segment is about self-advocacy, and we have a panel of two here, Nikki and Emily. Before that, I just wanted to say something to our participants. You are a special group of people. That's the message our society is sending you. You may have been in special education. You may have been in the Special Olympics. You might have had a bowl of Special K for breakfast. Everyone is telling you you're special. I'm here to tell you that you're not. Now, the parents that are here are going to disagree with me. All parents, including myself, we think our kids are special. And I could easily spend a half hour telling you about my kids and how special they are. So parents, I assure you, I'm not telling you, the parents, that your kids aren't special. I'm telling your kids they're not special. You are not special. What are you? We live in a world where everyone is a mixture of strengths and weaknesses. Everyone, no exceptions. That means everyone is special. And if everyone is special, no one is special. So if you're not special, what are you? You may be different, and it's okay to be different. Actually, folks, it's good to be different. But if you're not special, what you are is equal. You are equal. You have equal protection under the law. You should have equal rights. You should have equal access to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, love, success, and all the good things that life has to offer. You are equal. So remember that when someone tells you you're special, yes, you are special, but everyone is special. What you are more is equal, and don't ever forget that. Our panel is about self-advocacy, and we have Nikki and Emily here to talk about it. What is self-advocacy? Well, what is advocacy? Some people define advocacy as educating the people around the individual as to what the individual needs. That's really what advocacy is. So what is self-advocacy? Self-advocacy is when the individual educates the people around the individual about what they need. It's not something that comes automatically to a lot of people. It's something that needs to be taught. It's something that needs to be learned. But all of us do need to do that in order to get through life. So, talking about self-advocacy, I have some questions for our panelists, and I'm going to start with Nikki. Nikki, can you give us an example of a time when you had to educate the people around you about what your needs were?
Yes, when I was in high school, I want to say my sophomore year of high school, I started being my own advocate because of a certain teacher I had. And I told her, hey, this is what needs to happen. If you don't do it, like, you're gonna have to.
So what did you do about that?
Well, I eventually went to the principal and I told him, I know she teaches senior English, so if there's any possible way, because I cannot have this teacher. She doesn't listen, she's uncooperative, she's just a pain in the butt to just have teaching.
Language.
Okay, she was a pain to have.
Thank you.
So in a way, were you educating the principal about what you needed?
Yes, in a way, yes I was.
And how did it turn out? What was the outcome?
Well, the outcome was I didn't have her for the next 2 years, thank God.
So you successfully advocated for yourself.
Yes, I did.
By educating the principal about what your needs are, and your particular need regarding that teacher. Excellent. Emily, can you give us an example of when you had to educate the people around you, or even just one person, about what your needs are?
This goes back. Maybe, not like a specific time, but I want to say maybe I started doing so around 8th grade, like around 8th grade, and then I didn't start around 8th grade because I started advocating for myself around 8th grade, around like the time I was in 7th, 8th grade. But one specific time that stands out for me in terms of like really truly starting to advocate for things that were necessary for me was when I had a parent educator that wasn't really the nicest person, so to speak. So eventually, it got to the point where she, like, the school basically had me get another parent that was arguably way nicer than the one that I had previously had. But another time that I can say that the school tried having me advocate for myself was at my first PPT meeting that I ever went to, which was about my junior year. And being at my PPT meeting was, I mean, I know the reason they wanted me there was to advocate for myself, and because I was like more almost an adult. And to be honest, like, I felt more comfortable like advocating and being a leader and being an advocate for myself when I was outside of school, other than when I was in school, because I know the whole purpose of being a self-advocate is good for you and all of that. However, being put on the spot to advocate for myself was really, really weird to me at first, but I think like the main thing that was that time back when I was in 10th grade, but then there was another time when I was much younger than a teenager, well not really, but I was in 5th grade and I was trying to exert my independence by using my power-less wheelchair for the first time, and I wanted to go off by myself somewhere, but the teacher and my aide like weren't a big fan of that because they just wanted me to wait until the door opened when I was coming back from another class. But I was kind of like annoyed and impatient and having to wait. Plus, in my 10-year-old brain, I thought that it was great to be able to go off by myself. But the adults weren't that big of a fan of that, so I guess technically when I did that was a form of advocating for myself. I'm not sure, but I also, in response for advocating for myself, I essentially got some of my privileges for that 5th grade year taken away from me. I'm still bitter about that. But, yeah. So those are the 2 to 3 main big times that I can think of where I advocated for myself.
Okay, thank you, Emily. And you notice in both examples that we have from our panelists, it was advocating for themselves in school, which is not an easy thing to do, especially at those PPT meetings. Raise your hand if you've ever been invited to a PPT meeting. Yeah. Now that's something I do for a living. I go to maybe 3 or 4 of these meetings every week. And for the young person who's invited to the meeting, it's a challenge to advocate because you're in a room. Everyone at the table is either a teacher or an authority figure. They're all so much older. You're outnumbered, you're outgunned, yet you're expected to explain to the team what your needs are and what works for you. That is not easy. Now, I have a question for you, Nikki, and then Emily, about advocating. Can you give me an example, give us an example of a time when you should have advocated for yourself, but for one reason or another you didn't, and what the outcome was?
God, Kevin, you're making me think over here.
While you're thinking, Emily, could you give us an example of a time when you should have?
I actually have to think about that as well.
Okay, I want you both to think about that, and
Stumped
then.
us, Kevin.
Pardon me?
Stumped us.
You stumped us.
What's that?
You stumped us.
That's right. I stumped the panel. That's right. I did. So while you're thinking about that, here's another one. What about barriers? Barriers to advocating for yourself.
Barriers?
Emily, you go first, and then you, Nikki. Emily, what about barriers?
Barriers off that. For example, I want to say, this is gonna sound really weird, but like, for high school, like, there was a lot of barriers because they were still treating me like a kid. But from what I can recall from middle school, which is technically when you're still a kid, so you really shouldn't be given that much adult privilege or whatever. But I felt like I had more freedom and privileges within the confines of school than I ever did in high school, and like some of those barriers that I'm thinking about in high school were the fact that I was like basically treated still like a kid, and by the time I got to high school, I didn't really feel like a kid anymore. Even though for the first 3 years of high school I still was one. But, and also like the independence thing and the way that they didn't think that I was going to go anywhere, which was really kind of annoying. And that's all I can think of right now.
Okay, and in listening to what you're telling us, I get the impression that the attitudes of other people are a great barrier.
Pretty much.
Yeah, and that's the way it works with people who have disabilities. The greatest barrier to people with disabilities is people without disabilities. Mm-hmm. Nikki, can you give us an example?
Well, in my freshman year of high school, I kind of didn't feel like I really belonged anywhere, so I was pretty much alone in my freshman year. And then I had this miraculous, awesome teacher who my sophomore year let me be a stage manager, and that was actually pretty cool because everyone's like, oh, you're weird, we are too, so hey, it's cool. Like, for the first time I actually felt like I belonged somewhere. And at New Hampshire Job Corps, I really didn't have that problem because 60% of us were mostly had disabilities, so we were just all like, okay, it was normal. This is normal. Okay, cool. You're awesome. We'll hang out with you.
So from what I'm hearing from you, Nikki, when you felt you didn't fit in, it was harder for you to advocate for yourself than once you felt you fit in, it was easier?
It was a little bit, my freshman year was a really, tough year for me. Like, I was in a new place, a new school. My freshman year, it sucked. But
I see. Okay,
no,
but
it was
finally
easier.
You started to fit in because you got involved in the school.
Mm-hmm.
Would you recommend that to people here who want to?
Guys, if you feel like you do not belong anywhere, get involved. Get involved, do something. I don't care if, just do something. Join Unified Sports, join Unified Theater if your school offers it. Yeah, join CT KASA, 16 to 26. 13 to 26, sorry.
Well, that's some good advice. Thank you. I see Michael Gelberg is here. Michael, where are you? Oh, there you are. Michael, I'd like to call up Michael Gelberg. Please come forward.
Sorry about running late today. I had a little traffic jam, a couple of traffic jams and a little program malfunction. So, as I don't know how much you were told about me earlier, I'm a special ed attorney who happens to be on the autism spectrum myself, and I'm here to talk a little about self-advocacy and to talk about how you can advocate for yourself and why you need to advocate for yourself, and a bit about my own experience. First, I want to ask everybody a question. What is normal? Can anybody in this room define the word normal for me? Not exactly, but anyone else want to try to define the word normal?
I had a friend once tell me, what's normal is weird and what's weird is normal. Meaning that there should be no definition for the word normal because nothing in this world is really normal.
That's a little better, but the bottom line...
The word abnormal is the usual way of what you're doing.
Let me put it this way. There is no such thing as a normal person or normal behavior. Everybody is unique and different. You can have normal heart rate. You can have normal blood pressure. You can have normal functions like that. But in terms of human behavior and thinking, there is no such thing as normal. Everybody is unique. Everybody is one of a kind. And what I think is normal and what you think is normal are not ever going to be the same thing. Everybody has their own definitions. There are norms we all have to abide by. People can't walk out on the street naked. People cannot go out and hitting people. But generally speaking, there is no normal. So anybody who tells you you're weird or you're not normal, ask them what normal is and see how hard it is for them to answer. As long as you're not hurting yourself or hurting anyone else or doing harm, nobody should tell you what you're supposed to be. So let me share a little bit about my life and my story. As I said, I grew up with Asperger's syndrome, undiagnosed in the early 80s and 90s, when people really didn't know what it was. They thought the autism spectrum was all children sitting in the corner, banging their heads against the wall, not speaking. And I don't know if anybody here is nonverbal. Is there anybody here who doesn't speak? So I don't want to offend anybody. Which doesn't make you abnormal. It's an alternate way to communicate. That being said, but bottom line is they didn't know what my disability was. They misdiagnosed me. They sent me to all the wrong schools. Never got a proper education. When I was in 6th grade, the school social worker, who was supposed to be the quote professional, told my mother, "Throw your son away, forget about him. He's never going to even graduate high school." Now I'm a lawyer, so he might have been wrong. Meanwhile, I had a friend then who, in a private individual counseling session, the social worker repeated what the kid told him privately to the whole group in violation of his confidence. Kid never trusted an adult again, and the day before his 16th birthday committed suicide because they said he was fine and well-adjusted and sent him back to public school. And the fact that he kept everything inside and never spoke to anybody and never spoke up for himself and just let it be, never trusted anybody. So as I say, they failed me, but they failed him worse, because I'm still here almost 24 years later. Meanwhile, a few years back, thanks to technology and the fact that you can find anybody now, I Googled the social worker to tell him how wrong he was and found his obituary. So never got the satisfaction of doing that, but at least I now know where he ended up, because what he did was wrong. Anyways, getting that to me, the reason I tell that story is it's a very crystallizing moment in my life and my direction of where I was. I didn't know it at the time in 6th grade, but that social worker is partially responsible for setting me on the path of my life. I got to college without having the proper foundation, and pardon me for sounding arrogant, because of my own intelligence was able to catch myself up. And was able to catch up, do the college level work, graduate with a summa cum laude, top honors from college, and then go to law school. Didn't do as well in law school, but it's harder. And got a law degree, became an attorney, and I've been doing special education and disability rights law for about 6-7 years now, trying to, as I always explain, help other children avoid some of the problems I went through growing up. And it's better now, don't get me wrong. There's still problems, but things are considerably better than when I was your age. You know, you're all 13 to 26. I'm going to be 40 this year, and if I could go back 15 years, there were so many things I would do differently. But if I could go back to 13, I could do a lot differently. But the point is that, you know, I've realized, because of all my experiences, that my goal was to help other children avoid some of the problems I went through and to make the world a better place, as cliche as it sounds. And if I'm talking too fast, let me know, because I'm a New Yorker. What I was going to say, though, is the biggest thing I can say is advocate for yourselves. As you see, I'm wearing a shirt now from the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, which I felt was appropriate today. It's the largest national group for people on the autism spectrum to self-advocate. It's the guy who founded it has, sat on disability councils with President Obama and become a player in Washington, D.C., more so during the Obama years than now under Trump, but I'm not going to get political. But the bottom line is the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, their goal is it's an organization run completely by people with autism on various levels of the spectrum. The general counsel is a Harvard lawyer who's got autism herself. And their goal is to teach people to self-advocate, because nobody knows you better than you know yourself. And the biggest problem I find is people, when they're young, kids and young adults, get told what they can't do, not what they can do. And everybody makes assumptions about them and makes a lot of, assumptions about what their abilities are. And they judge, if you're disabled, that you must be less intelligent. One of my favorite stories is my blind friend. She's legally blind, and people yell at her, and she's like, "I'm blind, I'm not deaf," when they try to talk to her. And so she doesn't understand why people think she has a hearing impairment from being blind. You know, you yell at a deaf person, not a blind person. And people assume if you have autism or you have some other emotional or developmental disability, you must not have the same abilities. You know, people don't realize, and this is gonna, again, I hate to sound arrogant, but I have a 130 IQ. I'm pretty bright. Not to sound arrogant, it has nothing to do with the autism or the social deficits I've had in my life. And particularly with autism, you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. Everybody is different. There's not a single person with autism who manifests the same, and that's true of most disabilities. They're all spectrums, as it were, and you know, we have to really be focused on the individual needs. And ASAN is just one of many self-advocacy groups nationally. And it's so important that people speak up for themselves because, you know, who's more qualified to speak for somebody with a disability than the people themselves? Or, you know, it's seen as very paternalistic to have, you know, the parents or people who think they know better. I mean, let's go back to, I hate to make the analogy, but go back to the civil rights movement. Why did they get civil rights? Because black people, including Martin Luther King, demanded them, not because white people said, we're giving you civil rights. And it's the person who knows best is the people who know best how to advocate for themselves are the people living the situation, if that makes sense. You know, I think that so often these assumptions are made, and I like to tell the story about a book I read, especially for those of you who are nonverbal. It's a book called Carly's Voice. Has anyone read it? It's about a girl in Canada who's autistic and was nonverbal. She was an identical twin. She grew up, and everybody assumed because she was nonverbal and didn't speak that she was sweet, innocent, very low functioning, didn't know very much, and everything went on around her, and everybody assumed she didn't have any comprehension or understanding. And if I use a word anyone doesn't understand, let me know, around her of what was going on. Well, as time went on, she got a letterboard and ability to type and communicate, and she communicated by typing. What did they find out when she was 13? Not only was she incredibly bright and recognized everything around her, she was arrogant, self-centered, and really kind of a bitch, to be honest. And nobody thought that about her because they all portrayed her as this innocent, naive little thing. She's 13 now and saying, all these boys are in love with me, they want me. And she was not at all what people envisioned her because she was nonverbal. And once she got the ability to communicate, they found out that she really was kind of a jerk. And not that it's good that she's a jerk, but it illustrates a point, a larger point, that people make assumptions about people with disabilities, and it's usually based on erroneous information. I've heard so many questions. People say, well, you're on the autism spectrum, how did you go to law school? And I know dozens of autistic lawyers. You know, like, again, my friend who's blind said, you know, or people think she's less intelligent because she's blind, and she's like, what does my ability to see have to do with my intelligence? My problem is in my eyes, not in my brain. So it's something that people don't totally understand. What's interesting, though, as an attorney, I will say this. Schools never discriminate against kids who are blind, deaf, or in wheelchairs. You never get those cases. In this day and age, no school is really stupid enough to not have a wheelchair ramp. And blind and deaf kids don't get, it's the stuff they can't see. It's autism, it's ADHD, it's intellectual disabilities, it's learning disabilities. It's what you can't see. As I always say, the big three of blind, deaf, and in a wheelchair, those get accommodated. Schools don't mess with those anymore because they're visible or they're easier to understand. It's the stuff that they don't understand or don't see that they have the problems with. You know, I think part of the problem is we as a society have to educate people about disability and educate people about what disabilities really are. You know, one thing that's big is IQ tests that schools rely on don't tell you very much, because an IQ test is based on some very limited amount of information, and as many psychologists have said to me, it's based on 3 or 4 composite scores. If you're really low in one of those areas because of your disability, it pulls down your whole score. It can be deceptive. As I say to people, I can get a really high IQ test because I have wicked fast processing speed, which is one of the components. I work very quickly and process at a very quick rate. It doesn't make me that much smarter, it's just that my processing speed will be abnormally high. You were gonna ask a question?
That IQ test you mentioned,
Like, I had like one of those in maybe in the middle school, and my brother might know what I'm talking about, and my mom might know what I'm talking about.
They're usually only valid at that age for 3 years anyways.
It's something called Myers-Briggs, and then when I
That's a personality test.
I know, but like, when, it's not really.
Myers-Briggs is the personality test. That has no bearing on schools. Schools don't use Myers-Briggs.
Yes, they do.
Well, they're not supposed to. It's not something that's used for schools generally.
They did that. They did that for my school, and when I took that, I had 2 different personalities for one-on-one.
That doesn't make sense. Well, Myers-Briggs is a personality test. It has nothing to do with school, or it's not supposed to.
Yeah, I know.
Then your school screwed up and did something they shouldn't have
It was
done.
my middle school. I don't understand the point of my psychologist at all.
Well, if it's more than 3 years ago, there's not much you can do about it now.
He's been around since my instructor at Taekwondo, which is a long time.
And like I said, IQ tests are not telling the whole story because you have to look at the individual subscores. Like I said, I have wicked fast processing speed. You know, there's a component on the bar exam that is designed so people run out of time, and the idea is they score it based on how much you get done. I'm one of the few people who could actually finish it in the time allotted. I'm not saying I did it perfectly, but I finished it because I work really quickly and I process really quickly. But that will make me honestly have a higher IQ than I probably should have because I'll score at the top 1% or even 0.1% in processing speed. So you have to look at the individual tests.
I agree totally with you, and I want to just make a comment that IQ is just a number. It depends on who you really are. Like, if you struggle with math or reading like I did in school, if you gotta accept yourself. You gotta accept that this is who you are.
Well, they put a lot of emphasis on math and reading, and if someone has dyslexia, there's always, do you have dyslexia?
Yes, I do.
So that doesn't affect your intelligence, but what it will do is, it will affect your reading for the rest of your life.
And you have to accept that.
Right, but the test won't show that because it affects your reading, but dyslexia has no bearing on intelligence.
Yes, and it's basically about self-acceptance.
I have a friend who honestly, he's dyslexic and he's not particularly bright, and people attribute it to the dyslexia, and I always say, I've met other dyslexics who are smart. It's not this dyslexia, he's just not particularly smart. But that's separate from his dyslexia, that he's not smart. And I see, you just said you have dyslexia, but you speak just fine. He uses a lot of the wrong words and says things incorrectly, and people don't understand that spoken words are not dyslexia.
I basically say things backwards.
Right. He uses the wrong words a lot, or he mispronounces people's names. But the point is that, you know, that's why I'm saying IQ tests are just a number. So what I do is I advocate for children with disabilities as an attorney when the school district is not giving them services, like if they're making them take a Myers-Briggs test, which tells you nothing about how they're going to learn. The Myers-Briggs is, I've never heard you've used in a school, so that's interesting that you mentioned that because that's not something for a school, that's more like for fun and games. So I advocate and work with other attorneys, school district attorneys, do similar to what Kevin does, but advocates don't generally go to hearings or file for hearings. And we try to get kids the best education because in many cases, school districts don't understand or don't know, or how many of you know what the main motivation for a lot of school districts is?
Budget.
Money, exactly. The more they have to provide, the more money it costs. And unfortunately, you'll all learn this, money makes the world go round. You know, cut corners that end up, and what schools don't understand is if you give kids services when they're 8, 9, 10, you're going to be paying a lot less when they're 16, 17, 18. And as I said at a conference I was at yesterday, that schools are very short-sighted. That giving money to services for somebody when they're a teenager or a child is going to be a better investment long-term than giving them the skills to be independent and have a career. Because then, if they're going to live on public assistance their whole life, that's 40 or 50 or 60 years of assistance. And if you can give them the tools when they're under 18 to be independent and they don't have to live on public assistance, you're saving the people money, taxpayers money in the long run. The problem is it's a different pot of money. The school district cares about their pot of money, the school taxes. That other pot of money is being paid by the federal and state government out of a separate tax pot, so they don't care that it's ultimately the same people. It's not their pot. I'd rather take the money out of your pocket than my pocket. Even though it all ultimately comes from the same place, which is the taxpayers. There's a great video I actually just saw this morning, some friends of mine worked on, from a group called Rooted in Rights. It's a disability group about healthcare. And how many of you have heard about the recent debate over health insurance and healthcare? And they talk about pre-existing conditions. And I don't know how many, have you all seen the list of pre-existing conditions? Everything's a pre-existing condition. So they're talking about how if without proper medical care and health insurance, they would not be able to be independent. These people would not have independent lives. They need wheelchairs, in some cases breathing machines, all sorts of things, and these are things paid for by healthcare. And this is a message to Congress. Don't take away our coverage for pre-existing conditions. You know, a congressman said recently that if you have a pre-existing condition, which includes autism, ADHD, learning disabilities, intellectual, what have you, you must have led a bad life. You deserved it. You did something to bring it on yourself. I love how he says that, and babies are born with pre-existing conditions, and he thinks they brought it upon themselves. You were going to ask something?
Like I was saying, people with learning disability are very intelligent. They're capable in their knowledge, but I don't care what people say to them or towards me. They're going to affect their life. Since when I was in high school, so many teachers in foundation school that I go to, they're trying to make my life go down. One of the OT teachers and one of my principal trying to upset me, trying to bring my life down on my goals. Well, my principal called me disabled, but I got myself offended. Like, I'm not comfortable with what he said to me. I'm my own man. I know who I am. And during IEP meetings, this goal is one of the goals is that it belongs to me, not nobody else.
You're right, and so I think part of what we as a society don't do enough of is thinking long term. We think 1 or 2 years at a time instead of 30 or 40. But like I said, getting back to the original point of self-advocacy, who is the best advocate for each of you? Yourselves. Always, never be afraid to speak up for yourself. Never be afraid to advocate. Never be afraid to say, this is what I want. This is what I need. Because if you aren't going to do it, who is? If you're not going to speak up for yourself, who will? And that's why these organizations like ASAN, there's organizations for every disability, unless it's something completely rare, about self-advocacy, and there are general self-advocacy organizations. I believe KASA is a national organization focused on self-advocacy without regard to specific disability. I know we're short on time because, again, I was late thanks to traffic. For those of you who drive, you'll appreciate that. Sure.
So that thing that you said, about the tests or whatever, like the intelligence ones that you're given, like when you're in school. I don't know if you hear me or not.
Myers-Briggs is not intelligence. Myers-Briggs is just personality. IQ.
The intelligence ones, but also I did take a Myers-Briggs when I was in a program before I transferred to my current school.
Before what? I didn't hear you.
I did do a Myers-Briggs when I was in a program before I transferred to my current school, and it was way off, but totally nothing like myself. But at the same time, the weights and the Wechsler and whatever they're called.
The Wechsler Intelligence Scale.
Yeah, those some of that stuff, like the language stuff and the other stuff that didn't involve spatial things, and the things that did involve spatial things, made me feel really stupid because I got a low score on them.
You're talking about the language or the spatial things?
The language was good, the spatial was horrible.
Because you probably have depth perception issues.
I do.
Which would mean, if you have depth perception issues, spatial, which has nothing to do with intelligence, spatial testing is useless because you can't put the shapes together properly because of your depth perception issues. Again, you have to look at the individual scores.
And yeah. But Myers-Briggs is also really, really dumb.
Myers-Briggs should not be used to evaluate intelligence.
Like in that program that I was in, like they literally was like, oh, we're gonna have you guys do a Myers-Briggs for whatever stupid reason they gave.
I know what my reason was. It was for careers.
Right, Myers-Briggs doesn't tell intelligence.
Mine was for careers too, I believe.
For dinner parties.
What?
That was stupid.
It was for dinner parties way back when.
That's stupid, but okay. Does anyone else want to? You want to ask? Oh, she's there.
You go first. Nikki, do you have something to say?
Oh, no. I just have a personal question.
Hold on. Let's get your mic.
For you?
Okay.
Just have a personal question. Since disability rights law is another career path interest of mine, I have a lot of them. What's the most empowering part of being a disability rights lawyer or special education lawyer, whatever your type?
I do both. I do some discrimination outside of special ed as well. I've done some college discrimination cases as well. The most empowering part is knowing you're changing the life of a child. I once had a mother tell me, you gave my child a future. I think that's the most empowering part, knowing you're making a difference in the lives of a child. And it's not easy. There are still people who don't get it. I had a girl, to get off track, not to get too off track, I was madly in love with, who has cerebral palsy. And she's very angry and hates me for it because even though men don't generally go for it like her, she resents her disability and took her anger out on me. So a lot of it is people with disabilities who don't want to understand or appreciate themselves.
Would you say that's the hardest part of being a lawyer, or is there another hard part?
Well, no, I think the hardest part is, dealing with board attorneys who just tell you. I once had a school district attorney tell me, your clients who were just the nicest, simplest people are manipulating the system. Their daughter is stupid and she'll take what we give her. And she said to me, this lawyer, your client's daughter is stupid, she's going to take what we give her and they're going to like it.
You do not use that phrase.
Well, she used it in a private conversation with me, so there's really not much I can do about it because I can't prove it. It was that's the other thing you have to learn is when you're an attorney and you're dealing with a school board attorney and you're going to have private conversations and they're going to say things that you're going to find offensive, but you just have to listen and not react, and you're not going to be able to use it against them because if it's not in writing, it doesn't exist.
Did anybody bully you or call you names when you were a kid?
When I was a kid, the girl did it when I was an adult. She thinks that her cerebral palsy makes her superior, and she's had issues because of it. She's actually got a federal job that she got through disability hiring, which is kind of hypocritical. And ironically, she's, I think, jealous because she went to law school as well and failed the bar 3 times, and I passed it on the first try. Part of it is her own arrogance. She didn't take all the accommodations she was entitled to because she was arrogant. But people, I think, bully us throughout our lives. I've had people bully me when I was a kid. I've had people bully me when I'm an adult. My father still bullies me. The difference is now I can tell him to go. I can't actually use those words here. Yeah. But that might not be the best example. But no, people are, it's human nature to bully. Unfortunately, humans like to make themselves feel better by bullying others. So yeah, I think bullying is a big problem, and it's just something we as a society have not dealt with.
And what was the most shocking experience with you as a attorney?
The most what experience?
What was the most shocking experience?
What do you mean by shocking?
Like something that you never encountered before.
It's always a different day as an attorney. I don't know if there's anything that I'm so cynical. Nothing can shock me. Any other questions?
I don't know if this is the same type of thing, but what was the most outrageous case you've ever
I don't know about outrageous. I mean, it's amazing what school districts will do. It was pretty outrageous that the school district attorney in that one case called the girl stupid. I've had cases where kids have been picked up and thrown across the room. A kid, autistic kid. This kid was nonverbal, so he didn't speak. And he had a tag on his, he was 5 years old, had a tag on him with his bus route number. And somebody changed it multiple days, and he got left on the school bus. And nobody knew this, and if the driver hadn't checked, he would have spent his night in the bus yard. That was pretty shocking. I've had cases where school district personnel have threatened parents. You know what, there's nothing that shocks me anymore because you see it all and you hear so many stories. I've heard cases from other attorneys that are beyond shocking. There was a case in upstate New York I read about where a kid in a wheelchair was apparently misbehaving, so they punished him by taking the wheels off his wheelchair as a punishment. And I always say to myself, what teacher or principal said, this is a good idea, I'm not gonna get in trouble for this? That nobody actually thought, somebody actually thought to themselves, I'm going to take his wheels off his wheelchair and nobody's going to punish me for it. That was kind of shocking that it didn't even occur to them that there'd be consequences to doing such a thing. Any other questions?
Same thing.
Wait for the microphone.
Sorry. For that to happen, that infuriates me immensely. Because that should never happen. I don't even think stupid should even be a word.
Which thing?
Do you guys agree with me? Do you guys agree with me? I think love is the best word right now should be used, and peace. That infuriates me what that person did to that wheelchair.
Right, well he didn't call him stupid, he just took the wheels off the wheelchair.
Well anyway, that should be what happened.
You're right, it shouldn't have happened, and I don't know why. Again, a teacher will let it go through their head to think, I'm not going to get in trouble for this. This is okay. Any teacher should realize if they take the wheels off a wheelchair, whether they believe it's right or wrong, there are going to be consequences. There's going to be consequences.
For taking the wheels off the wheelchair, what were the consequences?
I have no idea because I wasn't the lawyer. It was a case I read about. I don't know what the offshoot of it was. I think we're going to have to wrap up unless... Any more questions since that really wasn't a question?
No, it was worth a shot.
Alright, let's go. Do you think that they weren't going to get caught, that's why they did it?
I have no idea. I only know what I read. So, everybody's fascinated by this wheelchair case. I just know a little bit of it. I think, do you guys have any more questions or comments?
Bobby has one last one. Okay. No, I am not going to ask about the case that...
Good, nobody ask about the wheelchair, please. I don't know more than...
I'm not going to ask about it. I was actually going to ask you, do you have one of your business...
I will be around for a while, and I have business cards which people can come get from me. I'll be in the back, and I'll be around for a while. I'll hang around for a little bit. I think with that, they are ready for the next panel. Who am I giving?
Thank you very much. Alright, so I'm back. I'm the yoga lady. I'm here to share my goods with you. Today's second annual summit on building a good life is about community, okay? Everyone in this room wants you to succeed. Do not forget that, okay? We all have each other's back. Today's gonna end, we're gonna go back into our lives, we're not gonna see, there's a lot of unfamiliar faces here for me today. I didn't know a soul before I showed up. So I made a lot of friends today. Do me a favor, look around the room, take a moment, find some eyes, maybe someone you know, maybe someone that's unfamiliar, and say, I've got your back. Easy, baby. I can't go find where's your head? I got your back. You got it. Into the microphone, my friends. Hey,
And then rise your hands overhead, arching back, gazing skyward in a slight back bend. And back down, curve your spine, tuck your chin, tuck your tail. And imagine yourself just a 1/4 of an inch taller. And then again, we'll do the other side. Slowly return to this room and this space and make any little movements you need to come back to an awareness. Thank you all so very much. You can find your seat. And hopefully you feel refreshed and ready to transition into the next part of our day together. Thank you.
A day in your life.
Thank you, Sean. Oh, you need the mic.
Welcome you to watch a video presentation we call A Day in Our Life.
We came up with this idea in one of our meetings and want to give you a glimpse into how we are building a great life.
So sit back, relax, and enjoy this video presentation featuring Emily, Stephanie, Chase, Carl, Caitlin, and me, and the rest of the CT KASA gang.
Now we're going to have Xavier Farrell for closing remarks.
Just one line.
I'm 5'10". My doctor may claim I'm 5'9" and 3/4", but for all intents and purposes, and for the sake of my pride, we're going to go with the first story. Now, hypothetically speaking, there's a man named Bill. Bill's a good guy, pays all his taxes on time, crosses his T's, dots his I's, and would never daydream about football while his wife was talking. Bill's also 6'8", meaning he sees people as 5'10" as short. Now let's take a look at Rick. Rick really isn't as important as Bill is, so all you need to know about him is 5'2" and thinks I'm tall. Bill being 6'8" thinks I'm short. Rick being 5'2" thinks I'm tall. But I'm still 5'10". See, both observers use their own perspectives to understand how the reality they perceived relates to them. We all do this. When looking at reality, we innately compare it to an idea or experience that we've had before that are stored in our memory banks. We then determine whether that reality is worth our time and focus, how that reality might relate to us and how it compares to our prior knowledge, and to determine its value. It's an essential part of how we experience the world. However, this is what's relative. The choice in what we decide to relate reality to is what's relative, not reality itself. Going back to my first example concerning my height, both the observers interpreted my height differently, short and tall, because they were looking from two different views. The lens that we use to interpret reality, it's the viewpoint that each person assumes when looking at reality as a result of their individual experiences and interactions that they've accumulated over the entirety of their lives.
Now, that's all fine to use reality to understand, relativity to understand reality and how that relates to us. But limiting the value of something to our ability to compare it to something else is very dangerous. Because the value of this very thing is now dependent on whatever you decide to compare it to. Simply put, if I take these shoes and decide to compare them to a pair that is worth 3 times more, or 3 times less, how much I value these shoes is now altered because of what I decide to relate it to. Now with this understanding, we can do something. Something that'll make Einstein sweat a little bit. If only just for a moment, we're gonna ditch relativity. We're gonna look straight at reality as it is and find life's value. Are you in? Are you? Who's in to find life's true value? How are we gonna do it? How are we gonna do it? You guys seemed all for it. Yeah, ditch relativity, yeah, let's do this. How are we gonna do it? Well, that's what I'm here to tell you. Well, these lenses, the things we've been using to interpret reality up until now, have pretty much embedded themselves into how we see the world. So to get rid of them at this point would be unrealistic. So to see reality, you look through the eyes of your heart. An appreciative heart has the ability to look straight at reality and find value in it. An independent value that is not subject to the experiences nor lenses of those observing it. Now, I've learned that people are masters at doing things subconsciously. Yeah, breathing, walking, driving, dentistry, heart surgery. These are just some of the things we can do without putting too much thought into it. Unlike these things though, there are some instances where we should focus up a little bit. We should be very conscious of when it is beneficial or even useful to use our relativity lenses and what we are looking at through them. I like to refer to this as conscious lens usage. One statement that is very contradictory to conscious lens usage is, I wish. Acknowledging this, I had to forcibly remove it from my vocabulary once I understood the effect it was having on how I perceived the world. Once I solidified my resolve to see this endeavor through, I realized how often I actually said this statement, and secondly, how naturally it came to the tongue. Every time I said it though, it reminded me to be aware of which set of eyes I was looking through, and to make sure I was doing it purposefully. I added on a second rule so that every time I was inclined to say the words, I wish, I would stop and audibly show appreciation for the very same thing that I was unsatisfied with. To stop looking through here and start looking through here. All right, deep stuff, right? This I wish statement that I'm about to share with you is one that I said quite often, and if you were to ask my mother, she'd happily confirm. Matter of fact, don't ask her, please. That would just open a Pandora's box of groundings and punishment. It's a sensitive topic. Please don't. All right, here goes. Okay. I wish I didn't have to clean my room. Yep, there it is. It's a shame at how often I said that statement. Now that I think about it, it's a shame that how often my room got dirty. Well, it didn't necessarily get dirty. It just got messy. So clothes just happened to be all over the place. But if I could have stepped back and looked with an appreciative heart, I would have realized how much I actually had to appreciate. There was some suit jackets on a chair, some dress pants on the bed, and sweaters everywhere. Like, these were some good clothes. But rather than choosing to look with an appreciative heart, I subconsciously chose to be unsatisfied with my situation and missed the value that was definitely there. This is just a small instance where I missed the value that comes along with living. If life's value was as fickle as our shifting moods often say it is, then there honestly could be no assurance that life was worth living. If life was only valuable when I could feel that value, then people would have a much shorter life expectancy, because the second I couldn't feel that value, it would then become valueless, and I would have no qualms with taking my own life. Sometimes we aren't going to feel great. Sometimes we feel alone or dejected. Sometimes we can't put our feelings into words, and even if we could, we feel as though the people around us wouldn't understand anyways. No one is happy all of the time, but we innately know that regardless of how I'm feeling right now, there is still value in living. At those low points, I'm not looking at relativity. I'm not looking at how my situation might be better than someone else's to justify why I should live. I'm looking at the reality of my situation. I'm looking at the fact that I have a mother. I'm looking at the fact that I have a father, grandparents, uncles, cousins that all genuinely love me. I'm looking at the fact that if I were gone, three brothers and 4 sisters would be crying over my casket. I'm looking for life's value. But the reality of my situation is that life does indeed have value. A value that won't change no matter how beaten up, broken, or weak I might feel, or of how little of that value I can see at that moment. But this value can't be seen or appreciated through relativity, comparing one thing to the next until I justify that I should live. No. You have to appreciate life for what it is. Looking at reality through an appreciative heart and acknowledging that life's fundamental value is independent of those shifting emotions. Acknowledging that there's something worth appreciating in your situation and hardship is something that relativity often does not allow us to do. When you just wish for that bigger paycheck, when you have more than enough to provide for yourself, your family, your children, you can put a roof over their heads and food on the table and know they won't ever have to go hungry. When you just wish your parents would just leave you alone and miss the value in having parents at all. We become so focused on what's all the way over there, what we think will add value to our lives, that we miss the value that's right in front of us. Understanding that right here, right now, there are so many things worth appreciating in life, and applying that understanding to all aspects of life has allowed me to find value and significance in places that I never could have imagined that it would have been. This is something that I can stand behind because my life is proof. My day-to-day has much more significance because I can appreciate the fact that I had another day to live. I can appreciate the little ornaments and blessings that made that day worth living. But I'm not special. This value is something that I'm finding. It was already there in life, something that each of you can find for yourselves. Now, I'm not telling you to throw out your relativity lenses, because that's how you see the world. That's how we all see the world. What I'm saying is, know when to put it away. Be aware of when you're using it and when you're not. Use it to make life worth living, but overall, open the eyes of that appreciative heart that has been allowed to see so little. The independent, universal, and foundational value that life can possess can only be seen once reality is presented as it is, not warped or altered by our lenses, but in its unadulterated state. The eyes, they see relativity, but the heart sees reality. Thank you.
I don't know if you can top that. I don't know if you can top yourself.
Hello, everyone.
That's amazing.
Thank you again for having me. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you again for having me. This truly has been a wonderful and meaningful and educating event, and I greatly appreciate being able to stand before you guys again today. So, there are 3 main points that I would like you to remember as I present. The importance of who you are, which is your identity, how significant your impact can be, and the importance of what you pour into others. Look for those 3 as I continue to present. So, I want to be a hero. I have come to the understanding that the best use of my life is to try and positively impact the lives of those around me. This desire is far from some unrealistic aspiration to be like Batman or Superman or something like that. I don't intend on demonstrating superhuman powers like heat vision and super strength to save the day, but rather, I intend on being the change that I want to see in others. I want to help others because there were 2 distinct points in my life where I needed help too. The first of which was in a class of primarily Black and Hispanic students of varying complexions. Despite these wide variety of skin colors, it was made explicitly clear that I had the darkest skin in my class. The dark color of my skin was the punchline for nearly every slur thrown at me throughout my middle school years. The insults and jeers spewed at me flooded my sense of self, and I began to lose sight of who I really was. Their continued comments made me believe that Xavier Alexander Farrell was no more than a kid with dark skin. I began losing my identity. The insecurity that developed around this time followed me throughout the majority of my years in high school. However, I did a fairly good job at hiding it. I put on a mask that assured people that I was confident in myself and I had my life in complete control. But this was an act. The performance that I was able to maintain so well started to fall apart during my junior year of high school. During my 11th grade year, I took a lot of difficult classes. I ran cross country, I played basketball. I was a part of my high school band. I was an active member of the church, and the list continues. I would find myself waking up early to get to school, then to stay after school for several hours for extracurricular activities, then have to push myself to stay up late into the night and complete my homework. This became a cycle where I'd wake up early, stay up late, wake up early, stay up late, and it was rough. The academic rigor, coupled with the constant and stifling pressure to be successful, gave rise to the insecurities that I tried so hard to bury. This is the second point where I needed help. I first began questioning my own abilities to achieve and be successful. As I questioned my capacity for achievement, I started to question, what was I trying to achieve? I couldn't figure out why I was working so hard. Of course, people told me the generic answer that you have to work hard to get a good education, and once you get a good education, you can get a good job, and that sequence. But that wasn't strong enough for me. Not that it wasn't true. Working hard will lead to a good education, and most likely a great job. But I couldn't personalize such a cookie-cutter answer. The individuals that were on the panel earlier found what they wanted to do and what they worked for. What was I really working toward? This bout of self-doubt worsened my insecurity, and I wanted to give up. I wanted to stop working towards success because I was in constant fear I couldn't achieve it. And furthermore, I had no idea what success meant to me because I still wasn't sure who me was. What I went through is not uncommon to some. For others, it may not have been skin color, but some other form of uniqueness. My family's, friends, and church consistently encouraged, motivated, and guided me through this period, and I was able to develop an understanding of, first, what makes up my identity. I was able to break out of the mentality that my physical appearance was the only thing defining me, when in actuality, it's one of the smallest defining factors of Xavier Alexander Farrell. There are some factors that make up our identity that we cannot change, but the much larger portion of who we are comes from what we do and who we choose to be. How I treat others, how I present myself, and whether I seek to serve or to be served are some of the factors that I learned contributed to my identity. Now that I began to understand who I was, I could start figuring out who I wanted to be. As I came to terms with where I was in life, what I had, and most importantly, who I was, I found value and contentment in my circumstances. This transition from being burdened with insecurity to having confidence in who I am was only achieved because I was given a shoulder to lean on. All the accomplishments and successes I achieved have only come to pass because they answered my need for help. They being my family, friends, and church. They became the hero that I needed, not by a display of extraordinary capabilities, but because they chose to pour love and encouragement into my life when I needed it most. Being happy with where I was, not looking for something to superficially better my circumstances, allowed me to see how I could help to better the lives of those around me in a significant way. With each passing day, I began to see my surroundings in a different light. And I started realizing how much good needed to be done in my community. On my family's Sunday afternoon drives home from church, we'd often stop at a Family Dollar before reaching home. It became something of a routine. I'd walk into the store and walk out without ever having to open the door because a man in his late 20s, dressed in worn and tattered clothing and mangled hair, would open it and smile. He was always there, but his clothes rarely ever changed. He'd never ask for money or make you uncomfortable with a stare. I'd always give him respect, say thank you, and even sometimes give him water bottles or some money. But what if he was given everything he needed to get back on his feet? What career would he pursue? What ideas would he share? What would he do with the compassion that was given to him? As we continued to go to the store, thoughts like these played over and over again in my mind, and I could clearly see the man's face as I pondered them. I was perturbed that I could do so little for him, but even more so that his circumstances hadn't improved for several months, having seen him. It led me to question, what is my community actively doing to help this man? This brief interaction showed me how it is often well within our ability to leave a positive impact on someone's life, but we rarely seize the opportunity to do so when it truly is needed. But I'm so happy to say that it's not the case for this community. Each one of you have chosen to pour into each other's life, to push each one of you in the right direction, to grow and develop. I wanted to see a change in my community, and I resolved to be that change. Being empathetic when the world turns their back in disapproval, building up instead of tearing down, and simply acknowledging someone's value as a human being are actions that I truly believe fall under the category of heroism. Daily, I have made sure to become that change that I wanted to see in the world. But I know I'm not a hero yet. Unlike the heroes in the comics that can reach every cry for help, moving towards becoming a hero will require that I inspire others to turn this small ripple of change into a tidal wave of heroism. A tidal wave of that nature will envelop and change the lives of the multitudes, combating ostracism, hatred, and loneliness. My desire to become a hero is not driven by the accolades or honors that may come with it, but simply because there are people in this world that need help and are well within my capabilities of helping. That same warmth and love that I was shown. I don't have the last piece of paper, but I'm just going to speak from the heart. Okay. That same warmth and love that I was shown can be what changes. Not only changes individuals, but cultures, communities, and eventually, the world. So moving forward, today was not only an event for just today, but it's a movement in the right direction. The right direction being pouring into the lives of others. Not only just pouring into them, but showing them love and inspiring them to pour into the lives of their friends and to continue to spread that tidal wave of heroism. Combating ostracism, combating hatred, and combating loneliness. And I would be remiss to not mention some of the comments that were said today in standing up and self-advocacy. I remember one individual said, just stay chill. Don't let the crowd get to you. Don't be burdened down. I remember Adam said, be your own man or woman for that matter, because you are who you are. Your identity is not only your physical appearance or your outward appearance, but who you choose to be, what you choose to do with your life, and who you choose to impact. So remember who you are, the significance of your impact, and how you will pour into the lives of those around you. Thank you.
And thank you for coming. My thoughts about today is not only just about exactly the now today, but I think that everybody's future with their healthcare is going to be like a much bigger improvement for the rest of their lives under what we taught them. It kind of more like an educational class today, kind of more like a little college, except we talked a little bit more like all the types of healthcare, like psychiatric, to medical, to emergency, and what do you do with those? Well, what you just watched today and participated in, you should take a look at that again, and maybe think of the same thing again. Maybe those things can be useful and helpful in the future, you know? And I think that overall today, this was an absolute true lesson for all of us. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Adam Worrell from Stamford, Connecticut. I'm 25 years old. I came from the CT KASA. Today is definitely a very wonderful time at the summit in Bloomfield, Connecticut. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed many new experience with the new people, what they learned and what they did about healthcare, their lives, their goals that they want to do for their life and living. Just be who they are and ignore the ignorance and ignore the hard-headed people. Be what you are and succeed in life, and good luck to all you guys. And also one thing that if they get onto you, we're going to crush them down like a bug, big stomp. Again, stomp like that. We don't need this. Be who you are. Thank you, and have a nice day.
So I thought today went really good. I helped plan a good majority of it, so it was cool. Basically.
This day was the most amazing day. I mean, I had no idea what to expect, and it just went beyond my expectations. It ran very smoothly. It was very informative. All the guest speakers were terrific, and the kids did a great job, as well as all the adult allies and everybody else who helped organize the event. And again, great day. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Andrew Reel, and I think today has gone pretty good. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that was said about like self-advocacy and work and what people do and stuff like that. And it was a great day.
Hi.
What did you think about today?
It's fun. Most of it, yeah.
What was fun about it?
I think I like yoga.
Yeah? Yoga?
Yeah.
Did you learn anything new?
I think I learned a lot.
Well, today I learned a great experience from healthcare to how to advocate for yourselves. And the most important part was that the summit today taught me how to look for places that can help me with healthcare and where to find resources. And yeah, I really liked today's youth summit. That's it.
My name is Xavier Farrell. I was one of the presenters today, and I can thoroughly say I enjoyed myself to the fullest. One of the biggest things that I'm walking away with is that this event was very humbling, because oftentimes when we're in the presence of someone with disabilities, we think that we have to lower our speech or have to lower ourselves in some way to meet them. But rather, today, the conversations that were taking place, they showed just how capable they are to express themselves, to show that they understand exactly what's going on and that they don't need assistance, that they're independent in their own unique ways. So that's what I'm definitely walking away with today, that I'm going to see them as who they are before walking in with any preconceived notions. And it was an eye-opening experience today, and I learned a lot, and I can say I'm going in the right direction now. So.